Claude Schnell here with me, Music Institute in Hollywood. And Claude, what you been doing these days?
Well, among other things, walking these vaulted halls of MI,
Right.
enriching the minds of young students everywhere, trying to pass along some of the alleged musical wisdom that I've accumulated over the years, and trying to not embarrass myself in the process. And it seems to have been going okay because they keep asking me to come back, so I guess that's a good sign.
That means you're doing a good job.
That's what I'd like to believe in any event, but it seems, judging by the results, not so much that I've seen, but I've heard from some of my students who have been coming back to show me their progress and so forth, I'm not entirely disappointed in how it's been turning out.
Throughout all these years, you've remained humble, and you show your students most likely the best techniques and the best words of wisdom, because you have a lot of wisdom.
I try to pass along as much as I possibly can. What I find interesting is that there's no reason not to be humble when it comes to issues of music, because we're all in this together. We're all finding our way. We're trying to perfect, or at the very least improve our ability to communicate with our audience. And I think one of the things that's been working particularly well is, for whatever reason, my ability to kind of tailor the kind of information that I've been putting in the hands of individual students based on their needs. Whereas some might be very musically astute and have difficulty with the creative side, I seem to be able to extract from them the ability to at least discover how they can become more creative. And similarly, I've had an equal number of students who are just brilliantly creative, but lack the technical skills or the know-how to embody that creativity into a form that other people can hear. So it's been a little bit of both, but in each case, it's been equally rewarding to see these seeds kind of blossom and take on some real musical significance. To the point, to get back to what I've been doing, there was a particularly guitar student who I think I might have mentioned to you last time we did the radio interview after Ronnie's unfortunate passing. And I was very impressed with this guy just from the demo stuff that I had heard of his. And he had come to me looking for some direction of a couple of tunes that he had been working on. And he came back and played for me how he had integrated some of my input into the stuff he was working on. And I was more than blown away. I mean, it actually started to sound like something that, if I was the virtuoso guitarist that the student was, that I would have created myself, given that skill set. So as a result of that kind of fortuitous interaction, he's a guitar player with whom I'm now starting to work, and have every intention of creating my long forestalled project upon the shoulders of his guitar playing. And it's a guitar player by the name of Magnus. And actually, you can check him on his website, magnuslervik.com. Brilliant player. Lovely gentleman. Just a Swedish kid, too. Just very talented guy.
Wow.
Yeah.
How's your project coming along?
Well, now,
is it going?
surprisingly, indirectly as a result of my tenure here, it's been moving along well. I think over the years, I got a little bit complacent with, as I guess we all do when you get to a certain point of your life where it's about being able to pay your bills every month and do the things that you have to do to keep functioning, and you lose a little bit of the incentive or the motivation that when you're in your teens and 20s kind of propels you to want to make a name for yourself. And happily, with the addition of Magnus on this team, he is young enough where there is that fire and there is that ambition, and he constantly has been pushing me to move forward. So we actually have, in its inception, the beginnings of some real productivity. So it's coming along.
So in that sense, he's like helping you to
absolutely.
Let's move it here. Let's go.
That's precisely what he. In no uncertain terms, that's what he's doing. Like, what do we do? Yeah, no, indeed he is. And he's the other thing about Magnus, and perhaps it's true of most of the students who were fortunate enough to attend here. It goes without saying what a wonderful musician he is and what a great guitar player he is. But in addition to that, he has a very, very well-developed sense of production and productivity. So he, not to take anything away from his individual talent, but he's able to, because of the technology with which he is fluent, take virtually any idea that he chooses, and whereas back in the day it would have been, hey, I got an idea, we record it, you play it for everybody, and you go in the studio, and then you record one part, the other part. You know, a month later, maybe you have like a vague version of what this piece of music is trying to be. Whereas now, with basically a laptop and either GarageBand or Logic or Pro Tools or whatever platform you choose to use, you can just, in 20 minutes, have a working version of what prior to was just a mental image of some piece of music. So, armed with that technology and that ability, he's really geared towards moving it forward and moving it quickly. So, yes, it is moving along. It is moving along.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Because we need to see that product out.
So I've heard.
Eventually, right?
Yes. Judging by the emails that continually clutter my inbox, apparently you are not alone in your desire to see what I've been up to for the last decade. But hopefully you will all find that it's been worth it. I suppose part of the good news is that I'll listen to some of these tunes that have been resting dormant for a bit of time, and they still make my hair stand up on end. And with this hair,
and that's a good thing. If it makes,
yeah,
you know,
yes, indeed.
Because if it doesn't stand up, means it's not
exactly
uniquely special.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I don't want to get too far into the instructional thing within the context of our interview, but that's one of the things that I try to impress upon my students is that it doesn't matter how musically elaborate your creativity is. What matters is how honest the sentiment that created it is, because that's ultimately what the audience responds to. And I think the period of life that I was in when I began writing all of these tunes, there was a lot of stuff going on. It was right after, well, a lot of personal things that transpired in my life. And as a result, I think my music is imbued with quite genuine and quite authentic emotion, which even after all these years, transcends the performance, and it remains intact. So I'm kind of happy about that. It's not a substitute for actually getting it done, but at least it has, hopefully will have made the wait well worth.
When you started into music, was keyboard the first, or piano, the first instrument of choice?
Back then when we had steam-powered pianos.
Steam-powered?
No, piano was my first instrument.
Okay.
When I was, I don't know, 4 or 5 years old, a piano turned up in the house. And when I was 6, a teacher turned up with it. And like probably everyone who took piano lessons as a kid, I was kicking and screaming and didn't want to have anything to do with it. I wanted to go out and play with my friends, and that wasn't an option for me.
Okay.
So, so I was kind of tethered to my piano for every day after school for pretty much my entire childhood. And that was the first instrument. When I developed something of a facility and discovered that, hey, if I play piano, I can play organ, and if I play organ, I can be in a band, and if I can be in a band, I'll meet girls. Just about that time, my parents would absolutely not allow me to make the transition from a piano to an organ, because they figured I'd grow my hair long and start smoking dope. I don't know what they were thinking, but apparently they were.
We got the wrong hair now.
Yeah, but piano was the first instrument. I eventually moved into to keyboards and synthesizers.
Ever touched a guitar?
I've touched it to move
I
it from
mean.
point A to point B. No, once upon a, I mean, like everyone.
You know, ever go into different instruments like?
Yeah, I think I played trombone for a year in high school band, which actually was kind of a good education to learn a monophonic instrument. That, with the beauty of a piano, of course, is that you can play up to 10 notes at a time. Trombone, you get the one.
Right.
So I mean, it was just a requirement. It was either sing in the choir or learn an instrument, and clearly singing was not going to be part of what I was going to do. So so it was something I kind of had to do. But as it turned out, it was a real education because of how much less you could actually play, and how when you're only able to play single notes and single melodies. It developed in me an understanding of how those single melodies blended into a composition, into a band, into an orchestral piece or whatever. So yeah, so I did that for a little while. The guitar thing, yeah, I tried to play. I got as far as an E, D, G, and a C, and when I got to the bar chord, I just wasn't there. Wasn't in the cards.
Wasn't ready for that.
Wasn't in the cards, not at all. And of course, about that time, sampling started to become available, and when I discovered that I could just have really good guitar samples on keyboards, there wasn't any point in
then
struggling.
you're a guitar player there too.
Exactly. Yeah. So at least, yeah. I mean, it was a working model. It was certainly better than my poorly executed attempts at playing guitar.
When you look at a keyboard, do you say it's natural or man-made?
I'm ridiculously lucky and fortunate to own an 1884 Steinway in my home, which is my baby. It's my main instrument. It's the instrument that I feel the most comfortable playing. It's the instrument that extracts from me the most meaningful compositions. It's the instrument that beats me up when I don't practice enough. It's the instrument that rewards me when I do practice enough and have those moments of inspiration where something comes across well. The very fact that this piano has been around 120-something years, to me, reflects the organic nature of it. The fact that who knows how many countless souls have played on this instrument over the years. I mean, I've had it for the last, I don't know, 20 years or something, but prior till, there were God knows how many players. So I think if it's something that was made from elements of the earth, the wood, the metal and the strings, then it kind of is a natural thing. No, none more so than, say, a violin, for example, which is just 4 strings and a hunk of wood that in the right hands make the most beautiful, emotional melodies sounds that you'd ever want to hear. So I feel that way about pianos to a certain degree. Granted, there are certain mechanical elements in a piano which technically qualify them as a percussive instrument. I don't know if you knew that. I was always surprised and a bit put off that it's got strings. Why isn't it a string instrument? But apparently, the thinking was that because the strings are percussively hit by hammers, that makes it a percussion instrument. All right, fair enough. I think the fact that the piano was one of the first instruments that integrated mankind's ability to be mechanical, to go beyond the simple plucking of a string or the banging of a drum. I think that in and of itself reflects the anthropological development that humans brought to the planet, that we were able to do because we learned how to use tools and whatever. So in that regard, I think the piano is a very authentic instrument on which man-made music can be represented. When you get into the higher technology keyboard instruments, granted they have capabilities that a mere piano couldn't possibly match, but at the same time, to me, they lack some of the organic qualities that a legitimate piano would have. In some cases, I'd rather play a broke-down piece of crap little spinet piano than the most esoteric, advanced keyboard if it doesn't allow me to convey the emotion that I'm trying to create. Similarly, when it comes time to play guitar parts, I'd rather have the really cool electronic keyboard. So it's a little bit of both. Like most things in life, there's give and take.
Let's go to Dio here. Your first memories.
Not literally, of course.
I know. But in memory, when you were on stage, your first tour, what did you hear on that stage? Do you recall how it felt on stage?
I remember exactly what I heard.
What did you hear?
What I actually heard was nothing, because the first gig that I did with Dio was a gig we played at, I remember this so vividly, it's not even funny. We were opening for Aerosmith. We were the support act on the Aerosmith tour. And because this was the first Dio gig, nobody bothered thinking that, hey, there's a keyboard player now, he needs a monitor. So I actually had no monitor. Okay. And we started the show, and obviously we had been in severe rehearsal, and this is a real testament to how excellent of a taskmaster Ronnie was, and how well prepared we were. Because even though I didn't have a monitor, even though I kind of had to rely on visual clues from Vinny playing and watching his hands flying up and down the neck of the guitar, we were able to perform and get through the gig. So as far as what I actually heard, it was just like stage ambience. I suspect that's not really what you're referring to.
No, this is great. You know, it's-
Because what I do remember, and it's almost a serendipitous event, that had I had a monitor, I would not have been able to hear the feedback of the audience, because that's what I remember from that gig, was just how even though the music was a bit nondescript because of the absence of a monitor. I mean, the bass was booming, the drums were so loud. I kind of heard Ronnie's voice wafting back and forth from the side fill monitors. But what I always heard was the swell of the audience response every time we would launch into another number. And that was just a wonderful, wonderful memory to have.
And the next day you had a monitor.
Next day I had a monitor, and every day after that, indeed, yep.
How much did it improve?
Well,
on stage with the monitor, then everything was taken care of.
Yes, I mean, then it was a completely different experience. It went from being a fly by the seat of your pants and enjoy it and hope that it doesn't suck, to a very precise exercise in delivering that which we practice to perform. And of course, the other thing too is that hearing what we sounded like live was also quite rewarding to see that you don't have to put a needle on a record or press play on a tape to hear what sounds like a record, because the music I was hearing back through my monitor was absolutely as vivid, as alive, as meaningful as the records that I recorded upon and those which I hadn't. Specifically, on the first Dio tour, since there was only the Holy Diver album from which we could call our live choices, we couldn't fill up an hour show with just Dio songs. So as a result, the set list was bolstered with prior works that Ronnie had participated in creating, including Black Sabbath material, which was great, and but more significantly to me, Rainbow material, because Rainbow was one of my favorite bands of all time, as being a direct outgrowth of Deep Purple, which, you know, for me was the touchstone of all things rock. And so we did Stargazer and of course Man on Silver Mountain, Long Live Rock and Roll, and some of those better known tunes. And that was just a dream come true, being on stage with a singer who I had listened to for so many years, playing the exact songs that I never would have dared dreaming that I would have been able to perform.
Ever play from Rainbow, A Light in the Black?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, sure.
What do you think of that track?
Phenomenal. I mean,
it is great.
There isn't a Rainbow track that's a stinker. I mean, every one of them in their own way, even the songs I'm not particularly fond of, there are moments that are just so cool that they infect you with their enthusiasm. Yeah, I'm a dyed-in-the-wool Rainbow guy. I mean, it's just, you know, Tarot Woman. I mean, just all of them. So
and you
many.
ended up being, you know, keyboard
Yep.
player for Ronnie James Dio, which was in Rainbow.
Absolutely, yes, indeed it was. And I mean, again, you know, if as a musician you can kind of see the threads of familiarity that run from Purple to Rainbow because of the Ritchie Blackmore connection, and then from Rainbow to Sabbath because of the Ronnie connection, and of course from Sabbath to Dio because, again, what Ronnie brought to the table. And having been able to be a part of that was just, like I said, a dream come true. It's the only way I could describe it.
Because when you look at it in the big soup of it all, these are the biggest bands in the world.
Absolutely. And in terms of historical perspective, you know, in my mind, part of me is still the kid sitting there with the record trying to figure out, you know, all the notes that John Lord played on, you know, In Rock and Machine Head and all the great Deep Purple records. And then fast forward a bunch of years and we're playing Castle Donington, and John Lord is on the side of the stage and he pulls me aside and gives me a hug. This is before we ever even met, and tells me that it did his heart good to see that somebody was paying such close attention to what he had been trying to do all those years, and took it a step further. I'll tell you, if I would have dropped it right then and there, it would have been fine, because for me, that was the epiphany of my life, having that kind of validation from literally a guy who was my idol.
Wow.
And I disagree. I don't think I've taken anything further than John had done. In my eyes, or to my ears, John is still the master of all things keyboard.
You're a very well-respected man, and feels very good to be around you.
Well, thank you.
You
That's
know,
very, very kind of you to say. I mean, I hear periodically that I have a good reputation out there, and that there are legions of people who have respect for me, and that's wonderful to hear. I mean, it's certainly not anything I strived to accomplish, but I think if you live your life the way we're intended to live our lives, that kind of comes along with it, whether you're a musician or a doctor, a bookkeeper, or whatever. I think if you live your life in a legitimate, honorable way, those rewards come back to you. And even now I'll be in it's like some drugstore in a tiny suburb of LA, and I'll see some guy who's clearly a retired metalhead walking down the aisle because he's got his leather and chains and then the whole nine, and he'll kind of like do a double take, and then he'll kind of make an excuse to come down the second aisle. This happened like twice in the last few months, and he'll be pushing his cart and getting the stuff that undoubtedly his wife and kid needed for him to get home, and he'll say, "Excuse me, I don't mean to bother you, but do you play keyboards?" I'm like, "Yeah, I do." He goes, "Oh my God, you're." I'm like, "Yeah, I do." Oh, and the emotion that comes with that. I only hope that wherever Ronnie is now, he knows how much I enjoy and value and cherish that kind of connection, which honestly only existed because of the exposure that I got from being in that band.
And it should be a good feeling that people honor that, and when you meet these people in that way, you're making something special for them too.
Apparently.
No, that's
yeah,
true,
no, indeed. It's really I've got. I don't know.
The rock legend taking 2 seconds to say good hello.
Well, interestingly, I don't know how much time you have for this interview, but on that note, a few years ago, I don't know if I told you this story in our social conversations as well, but a few years ago, very, very foolishly, I broke these 2 metacarpal bones in my left hand. You can almost kind of see the scar still from.
Wow. No, I don't know.
And I was just devastated. I mean, you could imagine it's the only part of me that mattered are my fingers. I mean, that's
sure.
And to be sitting there after this little incident, which of course was a result of my own stupidity. I'll be the first to cop to it being my own fault. But I'm looking at a new hinge in the middle of my hand because it's bending. So of course, we run to the emergency room and they do the X-ray, and yeah, of course it's broken, and they patched me up, and I'm like, well, now what? Well, now you've got to go find a hand specialist because we can't fix this. You're going to need surgery. And I'm thinking, I'm seeing my career just having come to an abrupt halt and that being the end of it. And very fortunately, we were lucky enough to find. I don't know if he's the best hand surgeon in the world, but for my money he is. And he fixed me up to the point where...
made your hand better?
At least as good as new. And testimony to that is that 3 months after the surgery, I was in a session where I recorded the music, which you can hear on my website at claudeschnell.com, that beginning of the animated feature that I've been working on. And in the course of having this surgery, I was sitting in the pre-op ward where, you're sitting there in your little dress and you've got your IV. And there's this guy in like a green sweats, kind of, well, not sweats, but green scrubs walking back and forth. Kind of like, doing the similar double take to what the guy in the drugstore in the leather and chains was doing.
Sure.
And he picks up my chart and he looks at it and he puts it back down. And I'm thinking he's like the orderly who's going to wheel me into the operating room. And after like the 3rd time he stops and he goes, "You play keyboards, don't you?" And I hold up my broken hand. I said, "Well, I used to." He goes, No, you're that Claude Schnell." I'm like, "Yeah, God help us if there's more than one." He goes, "Dude, I'm like your biggest fan. Me and my bros, we used to come see you guys every time you played the island." He went on, and he just went into this entire repertoire of all the gigs we played when we'd go to Hawaii and the set list, and he remembered which venues we played, and we had played the Aloha Bowl one year.
He's a fan then.
He was a fan, and a diehard fan, who was now a surgeon at Cedars-Sinai in Los Angeles. And he goes, "Well, can I get an autograph?" I'm like, "Well, of course you can." And he pulls out a prescription pad. So, okay, right away I know he's not the orderly, just waiting to wheel me into the operating room. And so I signed this thing for him, and I said, so what do you do? He goes, "Oh, me, I'm just a surgeon here." Just a surgeon at theaters, oh my God. I mean, that was such a cool moment, I can't even tell you. And it's great that he was young enough that when he was going to concerts, Dio was the band that he and his friends went to go see. And I'll tell you, I never expected to be smiling going into surgery to kind of see if my hand was going to work.
In that way, made you feel more comfortable?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yep. And I knew I was in good hands. Now, he wasn't the hand surgeon, but by the time I was done speaking with him, there was a kind of an entire entourage of the anesthesiologist came over, the nurses were coming over, Meanwhile, the surgeon who actually, as a gesture of kindness to me, was willing to work on his birthday to repair my hand, he was sitting there waiting for me to be prepped for surgery, and I remember him saying specifically, more anesthesia, less talking. So that was the last thing I remembered, and off I went, and the hands now work good as new.
Final thing, when's the Claude Schnell book coming out? With all this knowledge you got.
Well, you know, I will leave that to you, my friend. You can be my biographer. You can document this. We'll just do more and more of these interviews, and
Yeah, because these stories have to be shown. You know, it's incredible. What I get out of you is so much knowledge.
Wow.
You know,
Again, you're too generous, Smithy. You really are.
I'm just giving you what I get, right?
Well,
you tell me these incredible stories. I listen.
Mm-hmm.
I share them with the world, and I think you.
So if I write this book, you're telling me I could at least sell one copy?
There'll be one copy sold.
Yeah.
I think more.
Maybe two.
Yeah.
But you know, from all the feedback I get about my music taking so long to finally find its way to the mainstream so it can be heard, over the years, obviously, many people have heard the things that I've been working on, and I've kind of tongue-in-cheek developed a line saying that, well, it's my intention to play my music for everyone in the world, one person at a time. So maybe that's how the stories will get shared as well.
Well, they're
But you
being
never know.
shared.
Yeah, well, yes,
You
yes,
know?
indeed. Actually, the truth be told, when this music does finally get to see the light of day, I think many of the stories will be complicit in the music itself. I think a lot of the things that I've experienced throughout my life are conveyed in some of these tunes, both lyrically and musically. So you'll let me know when you get to hear it, if you got that same feeling.
I'm sure I'm going to listen to it very good, and I'll let you know what I think of it.
I'm sure you will. I'm sure you will.
Claude Schnell, Music Institute,
Jason
Hollywood.
Saulnier, best interviewer in the world. Thank
Wow.
you, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you.